Hello, and welcome back to Bounceability, a 5-module resilience journey. And today is webinar 5, unfortunately, the last webinar in the series. And it's about humor as an antidote to stressful situations. And how do we make everything we've learned on this journey that we've been on together, how do we make it stick? And I'm going to start with why being silly and having fun and laughing is such a good thing for resilience and how it builds resilience. And I'll tell you a little bit of a story about me and how humor helped me through a difficult situation at work once. I was working as part of an organization that had to wind up, had to shut down. And of course, that was very stressful for myself and the whole team there. I was the CEO of the organization, and we had to wind up the organization, and that involved photocopying thousands and thousands of documents to store digitally. It involved, you know, saying goodbye to clients, winding up contracts. But the photocopying was the thing that I remember most because it took us so long. It was a 20-year-old organization, and you can imagine how many old archives there were that we needed to scan and photocopy to scan in and store digitally. And so this was taking long hours with all of us. And I remember we started having photocopying races. We had two machines, or scanning races rather, and we had two machines. And if you were on duty scanning documents that day, you could race the other person who was scanning documents on the other document machine. And it sounds ridiculous now, but at the time it was really fun because it was something different. I mean, it's quite tedious scanning documents. But when we made it a game like that and started racing each other, we started laughing, and that eased the stress of the situation and the difficulty of the situation and made us look forward to the day a little bit more than just doing something tedious and stressful as winding an organization up. And the reason why humor and being silly is so effective in helping you be more resilient and effective in helping reduce stress and anxiety is because it allows us to not take ourselves too seriously. It helps us to integrate opposing perspectives and make meaning of suffering. Um, if our lives are sometimes incredibly serious and sad in many different ways, and humor brings back some balance to our lives. Um, you know, being alive has a humorous component. Not everything is serious. So we should laugh at the fact that we can't possibly keep up with everything. Fun also breaks up boredom and fatigue. It fulfills social needs, increases creativity and willingness to help each other because when things are fun and funny, you're more willing to engage in it. It fulfills the need for, control because we have control over the humor and the situation. It improves communication and it breaks up conflict and tension. So you can see why, on its own, humor and having fun can really help uh, situations that cause us to feel drained and stressed out. So, the insight I want you to take with you today is that laughter is important for building resilience because it can help us cope with difficult situations and emotions in a more positive and effective way. And of course, research has shown us that laughter can also improve our immune system, lower our blood pressure, reduce levels of cortisol, which is our stress hormone. And when we're faced with challenging situations, laughter can help us to see things from different perspectives. So, when you laugh at yourself for making a mistake, for example, just helps you to see things not in a serious way and helps things to not be so overwhelming. Um, Laughter releases endorphins, which is a chemical inside our body that is 10 times more powerful than pain relieving drugs like morphine, which is why people enjoy exercise so much because you release endorphins while you're exercising. And, laughter, it releases the same thing as when you exercise, strenuous exercise, and it feels good. And every time you have a good hearty laugh, you burn 3.5 calories. So if you're looking to burn some calories, that's a really good way to burn some. and it increases your oxygen intake, which is so good for your body and is good for your cells. And laughter increases your pain threshold, boosts your immunity, and relieves stress in general. So it's a no-brainer. And I mentioned earlier how laughter and humor can strengthen relationships and social connections. This is super important for building resilience, as we mentioned in a previous webinar, how social connection is great for resilience building. So when we share laughter with others, you get a sense of camaraderie and social connection that helps us feel more supported. And as you know from previous webinars, that's super important in terms of building resilience. So overall, incorporating humor and laughter into our lives can be an effective way to build resilience and improve our mental and physical well-being. And you should look at ways to find the fun and the humor in situations as much as you can and as much as is possible. So a tool out of today's webinar, it's a really simple one. It's not complicated. It's really just schedule fun at work as much as you can and as much as is reasonable. Scheduling fun at work is a great way to boost morale and productivity because it helps employees relax and recharge. So if you're a team leader, especially in today's environment, it's really stressful at work. If you're a team leader, you need to be scheduling fun as part of your team environment. And how do you do that? So people often ask, how do I do that without, you know, compromising work and without compromising deadlines? Well, first you need to plan team building activities. So team lunches, outings, or group games, things that people want to participate in. So don't do it just for the sake of it, because sometimes it can have the opposite effect. If people in your team don't like, you know, games and having, doing silly games together, don't do them because it will have the opposite effect. But if people enjoy having lunch together, make sure that you have team lunches and make it a little bit fun and different by getting people to bring their favorite food that everyone can share with them. And these activities help build camaraderie and helps people to get to know each other and interact outside of work, which also builds that social connection, which we know is really good for resilience. Also, celebrate achievements. Have fun in celebrating achievements. If you've completed a project or you've met a particular deadline or you've achieved something, a big goal as part of your team, celebrate it. Um, and celebrate it in a fun way so that people can enjoy the stress release of completing something that may have been quite difficult to achieve. Also, create a fun workplace. So create, add decorations or colorful furniture, or improve the workspace by adding plants, make it a bit more natural. And this makes the office or your work environment a little bit more enjoyable, and it helps people to be a little bit more relaxed and encourages a fun and relaxed environment. Of course, some spaces you can't do much with because you're regulated and you have to abide by regulations for a space, but as much as possible, um, or think of unique ways that you can make the space more relaxed and more fun and creative for your team. Also, make sure that people are having breaks and allow for breaks and have designated fun breaks. So not only, your lunch break that everyone disappears for, but have designated fun breaks. You could have a ping pong table at work or a lounge area where people can relax and socialize if possible. Another idea that people have had that I've worked with is have theme days, such as dress up days or potluck lunches, um, if people are amenable to that. And it just makes people look forward to something different. Remember, it's important to make sure that activities are inclusive and don't exclude anyone based on their interests or abilities. So keep that in mind too, otherwise it will have the opposite effect in what you're trying to achieve. Now, I know lots of people protest that being fun or being silly at work isn't professional, but it is possible to be silly at work and have that humor and silliness while still maintaining a professional demeanor. And here are my tips for that. First, know your audience. Be mindful of the people around you and their communication style. Some people may be more receptive to humor than others, and you don't want to offend anybody. So know who's around you. If it's your clients or your the people that you're serving, make sure that you're not doing inappropriate things around them. Also, use appropriate humor. Make sure your jokes or comments are appropriate for the workplace or for your clients or the people that you're serving around you. Avoid anything that could be considered offensive, and keep your humor light and in good taste at work. Use humor to break tension. If there's tension or stress in the workplace, a well-timed joke or comment can lighten the mood and reduce stress levels. But again, be aware of how others are feeling and don't come across as insensitive. It's all about timing. It's not just, randomly throwing silly moments in. Also, don't overdo it. While it's a great way to connect with others by being silly at the workplace and make it more enjoyable, if you overdo it, it can have the opposite effect. So, too much silliness can detract from professionalism and detract from the work, and also make people not take you or your organization seriously. So, it's about balance and timing. And lastly, be authentic. If you are one of those people that is naturally funny and silly, be your authentic self at work, show that side of you, let your personality shine through, and you might find that it rubs off on the people around you and other people want to join in. So it's really as simple as that in terms of humor at work. And um, it's just about incorporating it into your everyday and also about incorporating it into your private life and making sure you have fun outside of work to relieve that stress and tension of work. And those are the tips that I have for you in terms of silliness. It's not complex. There aren't complicated tools or techniques to teach you. It's about you finding the humor in your everyday life. So it brings me to this last part of all of our webinars, and that's making it stick, because we've learned a lot over the last 5 webinars. It's been 5 half-hour sessions, but really we've packed a lot in terms of your learning and what you need to change for yourself. And so I want you to spend the next minute, I'll time a minute, and I want you to think about this challenge. And I want you to write down the answer to this. Something I want to move forward with is. So, something you want to move forward with in terms of what you've learned in the last 5 webinars. What is something that you want to move forward with? What is the thing that you want to grab onto that you've learned that you want to change in yourself and move forward with? And standing in the way of that is. So, what's preventing you from making that change personally? Some examples there would be like losing track of time, forgetting, being busy. So take a minute now. I'm going to give you some time now. Take a minute, write a couple of notes down in terms of the last webinars, what you want to move forward with and what's standing in the way of that. And we'll come back to your notes there. So just sit with those thoughts for a moment. I'm going to talk to you about our experience of change. And in terms of us, in terms of willingness to make change within ourselves, we first have, if you think of it as a timeline, look at the diagram that I'm showing you now. It's a timeline. We start in one place and we move forward. And we first have point A, where it's our first thoughts on something. We decide, we have our first ideas and our first thoughts enter our minds. And we might think, oh, that's a good idea. That's a good thought. That's a good perspective. And we get a long time, we get to a decision point, and that's point B, where we go, I think I'm going to make a change. I want to make a change, and these are the things that I want to change. And then as time passes, we make the change. It doesn't happen instantly. It's something making change happens over time where we get the idea, the information, we make a decision, and then we make the change. It's actually not a simple process as I've learned this thing today in this webinar and now I've changed. It's a linear process over time. And this is a stages of change model that shows that linear model that I just showed you in a different way. And you've got what happens before change and what happens after change. And on the left-hand side, you've got before change. So it's where we make a decision, we contemplate, we think about what's going to happen. So there's a, we kind of we think about what it is that we want to change, and then we make a decision, and we're going here anti-clockwise on the circle, and then we prepare, and then we get to change on the other side where we take action, and part of action is maintenance, and then sometimes there's a relapse, and we keep going round and round in circles until we've made a good change. So we'll contemplate again, we prepare ourselves, we take action, and then we might relapse, and eventually there's a solid change. But the key thing here is, as part of that action, when we take action and we make the changes, there is a maintenance that we need to do. So you can't just say, okay, I've changed now, I've made this decision and now I've changed. If you don't have maintenance and you don't keep maintaining how you think, how you feel, the change doesn't stick and you relapse and you keep going round and round on the circle, and it becomes very frustrating, and many people give up and they never make the change. So it's important that as part of your learning out of these 5 webinars, that your contemplation, you're thinking about it, you're understanding the information, and then preparing what you're going to do to change, and then taking action also includes maintenance over time, over a few months, so that that information sticks and that change sticks. Because the fact of the matter is, we forget most new information very quickly. And this is the forgetting curve, and it was developed by Herman Ebbinghaus, and he developed the forgetting curve, and it's a theory about the decline of memory retention over time. He was a German psychologist, and he conducted research on memory and learning. And according to his theory, we forget information at a very rapid rate in the first few hours or days after learning it. So you'll find the webinar that you did, webinar 1, right at the beginning of this journey, you've probably forgotten most of the information in that webinar. And that forgetting rate slows down over time. So even after just a few days, we have forgotten a significant amount of what we learned. And as time passes, we forget slower and slower and slower until there's a little bit left that we remember. But that remembering of that, we eventually lose that too, but it takes much longer to forget what we've learned in that bit. So he said that memory retention is improved through repetition and reinforcement, and by revisiting information at specific intervals after learning it. And by doing that, we can reinforce the memory and reduce the rate of forgetting. We can reduce that curve, which is why it's important that we review what we've discussed in all of these 5 webinars, that you go back and you review it, look at your notes, look at the participant workbooks that were given to you, review all the notes, read them, especially of the areas that you are keen to change. And part of that is turning off that rubbish channel again. Remember, I talked about the rubbish channel in the last webinar. And part of that is turning off this information that you keep telling yourself is that you're an idiot and why you can't remember things, why can't I get this right? It's normal to forget what you've learned. It's normal to decide, I want to change this thing, and that's brilliant information. I'm going to be better at this, and then forget about it and go back to old habits. But it's important that if you do that, that you don't turn on the rubbish channel and start telling yourself what a terrible person you are. It's just about remembering that it's about that cycle, that you just need to go back, plan again, take action, and do maintenance. That's the key here. So I'm going to help you start doing that today, and we're going to do a test. And I'm going to do a 1-minute memory stretch with you, and I'm going to give you 1 minute, and I want you to write down as many things as you can remember that we have covered over all 5 webinars. as possible. Write down as many things as you can, what you remember that you've learned. I'm going to give you 1 minute, and that time starts now. And that's your 1 minute up. So how many did you get? I hope at least five, because that's one thing from every webinar that I hope you remember. If you got more than that, well done. And if you got less than that, you need to go back and review those participant packs so that you start remembering more and you can make meaningful change to build your resilience now over the next few months after this journey ends. Now think about, what do you want to remember a year from now regarding these webinars? What is a key thought or idea that you want to remember a year from now that has been so revealing to you or so important to you as part of these webinars? And it might even be two things, but there's something that everybody takes from a series of workshops that is the key thing that they know that they need to change. What is it that you want to remember a year from now? And a little bit of a different question. What do you want to still be doing a year from now? So, if you make some changes, what is it that you still want to be doing? And it may be some changes that you've already implemented as part of your homework that I've been giving you after every webinar. What do you still want to be doing a year from now? What's been working? What has felt good? And I hope there's at least one thing out of all these 5 webinars that you can say that you still want to be doing a year from now. And then earlier, I asked you to talk about what are some of the things that would get in the way of you making change for yourself after participating in this resilience journey. And making personal change can be very challenging, and there are several potential obstacles that get in the way. And a few examples are things like a lack of motivation, um, it's a huge one in terms of making personal change. And without a strong reason to change, it can be difficult to stay committed to the process. So I ask you, do you understand why you want to make a change? And is it meaningful to you? Because without that motivation, you're going to struggle to keep doing and keep making that personal change. It could be a fear of failure. Um, if we're afraid of not succeeding or falling short of our goal, we may avoid taking action altogether. Some people have a lack of support. Um, and you would know that making a big change in your life requires the support from others, whether it's your friends or your partners, your other professionals at work. Sometimes you need to tell people about the change that you want to make, and you enroll them in helping you to make that change, to hold you accountable, to remind you, to support you when things get difficult, and to cheer you on. Support is a big one in helping you to make change. Other times it could be limited resources and you don't have access to the time or the money or the knowledge. And so if you find that this is something that's a barrier to you, need to take the necessary steps to finding more knowledge to support you, or find a way to overcome that barrier so that it doesn't become the thing that's an excuse for you to not make that personal change. And some people are very resistant to change. So that's a significant obstacle. Some people just don't like change. They're happy to be where they are, even though they know it's difficult. So, somebody might say, okay, well, I know that I'm not resilient based on, these 5 webinars, but it's harder to change. So I'd rather be unhappy. Um, but letting go of old habits, um, and staying comfortable is often the, the place people do sit at. But what they don't realize is making that change will actually put them in a better, comfortable place later. So if that's you, have a good think about, the payoff. Because recognizing these obstacles is an important step in overcoming them. So if you recognize that, these obstacles are there, then acknowledging them may help you make the change. So start there. Where are my obstacles? It's not just wanting to change, but it's knowing what your obstacles are and start there. What are my obstacles and what do I need to do to overcome them? So you might have remembered I did this thought experiment in one of the previous webinars, and that was, it was actually in webinar 1, I mentioned this. And I said that these webinars, for the duration of these webinars, here's an invitation that every time you encounter a situation you find difficult, frustrating, challenging, or annoying, see this as part of your training. And the challenge is to use these times as opportunities to practice applying resilience tools. And I would urge you to keep doing that. So I hope you've done that through the journey of these 5 webinars, that you've used challenging situations to practice your resilience tools that I've been giving you over this time. And if you have been, fantastic. If you haven't, now's your time to start and to continue to do so. This is your challenge. So as now the webinars are coming to a close, it's your opportunity to continue this practice. And if you haven't started it, it's your opportunity to start this practice so that you can use the tools that you've been given and practice using them and make them part of your journey and help to integrate them and help you to make that change. Another way to do it, not just to wait for those stressful situations to arise, but also to start practicing your tools, is to just choose 5 resilient practices that we've talked about in the last few webinars, in the last 5 webinars. I've mentioned many, but choose 5 practices and commit to doing them over the next 30 days. Find a way of keeping track of them and marking off success, because when you do that, you celebrate the success and it inspires you to keep going. So it's not just about doing them, but it's about marking them off and celebrating them, because that helps you keep going. So that's another challenge for you, not just waiting for the bad opportunities. So if you feel like, oh, things are good right now, I don't need resilience, I feel pretty good, still practice the practices. And you will find that when the difficult times come up, you're already efficient and proficient at doing them, and that will help your resilience as you move forward. Which brings me to my final tips for these webinars. Today is about finding time to laugh. Making time to laugh is important for your overall well-being, and it's easily overlooked in our busy lives. So seek out humor. Make a conscious effort to seek out humor in your life, and includes watching comedies, reading funny books, following humorous social media accounts, laughing with friends. Connect with others. Contagious to laugh. So spending time with others and having a good sense of humor is a great way to laugh and release tension. Make plans with friends or family members who make you laugh, and consider joining laughter yoga. If you've never heard of laughter yoga, Google it and look at videos. It's hilarious and actually is really good for you. I've done laughter yoga before and it's very contagious. Or you can join a comedy class if you wanted to really get fancy. Make sure you take breaks, and in those breaks do fun things and incorporate humor into your routine, because finding that time to laugh is going to help you relieve that stress. And that brings me to my final tip. And this is something that I have been doing for years, and it's been a wonderful habit to have. And I really encourage you to have it. Practicing gratitude helps you find humor and joy in everyday moments. And when you take the time to reflect on what you're grateful for and look for the humor and joy in those moments, you can change your life. And a really easy and simple way to do it is by asking yourself these 3 questions every night before you go to sleep. What did I learn today? What am I grateful for? And what will I do tomorrow? And this just helps you change your view on what happened today and your hope for tomorrow. So that's it for this series of webinars. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. I wish you luck on your resilience journey. Stay the course and help each other out, and look after yourselves. Goodbye.